In this WrestleTalk news, yet more CM Punk AEW updates, including signs that point to him being completely done with the company. Backstage deets on Bobby Fish's AEW departure, including heat with Punk. He's really getting around this week. And MJF stirs the pot by hanging out with WWE talent, plus loads more. So subscribe and enable notifications to always on for daily wrestling news videos.
Support WrestleTalk!
Now, if you somehow missed the news that has defined wrestling this week, let me kick the door into your sheltered life and write it with my teeth on your arm. Because post AEW All Out, Punk used his time at the media scrum to have a pop at everyone from Colt Cabana, Hangman Page, Tony Khan, and the EVPs of the company before promptly heading backstage to get into a reported fist fight with Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks, where his trainer, Ace Steel, reportedly took a bite out of the cleaner. It's utterly mad. Now, with Tony Khan forcing Punk and the Elite to vacate their newly won titles on this week's Dynamite, and reports stating that all involved in the Brawl have been suspended from the company, Punk is the only one for whom things still seem up in the air. Because varying reports have emerged saying that he's either injured, suspended, or could be entirely done with the company. So the latest report from Figure 4 Online says that Punk suffered a torn left tricep on a dive to the outside and is going to need, or potentially already has had, surgery. Now, recovery time from that is set to be 8 months, according to people more medically savvy than I. But on top of that, Punk is also believed to be suspended. How that works, though, when he would have essentially had to relinquish the AEW World Championship and taken 8 months off TV anyway, remains to be seen. Like, will he serve extra time after being medically cleared to come back, because it's not really a punishment if that's what he was doing already. But this hasn't stopped others from reckoning that Punk might actually be entirely done with AEW. Amidst rumours that he has alienated himself from a swathe of the locker room, publicly insulted those running the company, and privately taking a swing at them, is there really any way back from this? Well, according to Wade Keller of PW Torch, it feels likely that Punk is done. He said, "I'm almost willing to say Punk is probably done with the company, but I'm not super confident on that because I just think there's so many moving parts on this story." But that's certainly where their leaning is right now, as opposed to he's totally forgiven and the others are gone. I think it's more likely Punk is gone for a variety of reasons. And I don't know if it includes insubordination in that Q&A, or if it has to do with other aspects, or if it has to do with Punk just wanting out now. I mean, it's a really awkward first day back, isn't it? Hi, boss. Sorry, punched you in the face and my friend bit you. It's much better to just quit and not have to do it. It's dead embarrassing. Now, Fightful Select say the sources they've spoken to within AEW don't know Punk's current situation, and they say that it is all pending the investigation. But a source told them that unless Punk's suspension is unpaid or he's fired, it is superficial, considering he's going to be out of action well into next year anyway. Before we crack on with the rest of the episode, we just need to thank Superkick, Nick Mazesco, and Ryan Disco Stewart for their support on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/WrestleTalk to see how you can support us. Now, the more details that emerge about the fight, the more ridiculous it ultimately gets, like Kenny Omega saving a dog in the midst of the brawl. However, the more details emerge, the more things seem to land on the side of the Elite. Because Wrestling Observer Radio's Dave Meltzer said that he had heard that Punk threw the first punch during the backstage brawl. Fightful Select have also reported that the Punk Steel camp had softened on their original stance that the Bucks kicked the door down to Punk's dressing room to instigate the fight. They said that kicking the door down was a turn of phrase, suggesting that the Bucks had essentially forced their way into the room somehow. Now, Meltzer added to the picture of events, saying that Ace Steel thought that Kenny Omega was trying to get him into a crossface during the fight, and that is why he bit Kenny. I love all the varying accounts of how Ace Steel bit someone. They're just ludicrous. His wife was in the room. They looked directly into his eyes. Don't smile at him. He takes that as a sign of aggression. Now, Fightful said that much of the heat we're hearing on Punk was just as much about his Scrum Rant than anything. Scrum Rant. Sounds filthy. And that while Punk had been rubbing the locker room up the wrong way for a while, told you it sounded filthy, blaming him for all of the issues there was not fair, as they had reached an all-time high when Punk was gone. However, according to some sources, the post-all-out happenings were at least planned in some way and orchestrated by Punk outside of the actual fighting. Because Brian Alvarez of Wrestling Observer Radio claimed that sources stated to him that Punk walked into the scrum fully intending to handle it the way that he did. And those sources do not believe that it was influenced by the injury suffered during the match with Jon Moxley as a way of maintaining heat/interest, as he was going to be out for another 8 months. Now, Dave Meltzer said that because Punk's spiel was so practiced that it must have been planned, pointing to how Punk went after Nick Hausman and Colt Cabana completely unprompted as proof of this. Now, with Punk, Omega, Omega and the Bucks gone, and the two newly won championships having been vacated, you can imagine that plenty had to change come Dynamite this week. Tony Khan was essentially forced to change the heading on his very slow-turning ship. But Fightful Select said that the mood backstage was a lot better come Wednesday night, far less punchy first and foremost. But a source said that the situation from the weekend was out of sight, out of mind, with most just concentrating on showing up and working the show. Now, another talent said that the best way for all parties to make up for the public embarrassment would be to get over the issue, make money for the company, and ideally highlight some other talent along the way. Now, Fightful also noted that on Tuesday, a lot of the talent didn't know what they could and couldn't say on Dynamite, and all of their content had to just be adjusted accordingly, and Max Caster's microphone had to be turned off. But amidst all of the hoo-ha, AEW has also got plenty of other things going on that usually would get a lot more light in the wrestling news sphere, like the departure of Bobby Fish. Because the Undisputed Elite guy's contract was up at the very end of August, and a decision was made not to renew, so he has now left the company. Essentially got out last week before it was cool. Very hipster, very moustache. Fightful Select have updated about the situation, saying that there were discussions between Fish and AEW about continuing their relationship, but the two sides weren't able to come to an agreement financially, so they just decided to part ways. Now, the report notes that from AEW's perspective, the split was somewhat amicable until Bobby's tweets about CM Punk and the company. However, they didn't really have anything for him to do after Kyle O'Reilly was injured, so him getting out was probably a good thing. But obviously, this all puts paid to the rumors that Fish's departure was due to issues with CM Punk, because at this stage, who doesn't have the issues? What are you going to do? Let the whole company go? Now, a report from Fightful Select acknowledges that there was an issue between the two wrestlers stemming from their match in October 2021, because Fish reportedly didn't appreciate Punk's attitude after the bout, but that had absolutely no bearing on his contract expiring. Now, one talent for whom the backstage brawl and CM Punk issues has had plenty of bearing on this week is MJF, who made a triumphant return to AEW at All Out, only to have the entire thing overshadowed by an off-screen ruckus. Now, MJF used that to further fuel his return, though, playing up the contract bidding war in 2024. He hopes to start between WWE and AEW, using his return promo on Dynamite to reference WWE and its talent. And now he's been spotted with frequent WWE contributor, sports and pop culture commentator Peter Rosenberg, because MJF tweeted, "Me with one of the best wrestling broadcast journalists in the world, hashtag 2024. A hashtag again furthering MJF's long-term story of waiting to get out of his AEW contract so he can essentially go to the opposition. Speaking of the opposition, it's probably time to squeeze in at least one story about them, because they've got rumours too. Specifically the one about Sasha Banks and Naomi returning to WWE now that Vince McMahon has left the company. Because adding a little bit of fuel to that fire was a recent post from Titus O'Neil, who uploaded a series of Instagram stories featuring Banks and Naomi attending a Major League Baseball game in New York alongside himself and Bayley. Now, obviously the foursome were all colleagues for years and good friends, so this is probably just a friendly hangout, but it's one of the first posts to show Banks and Naomi actually hanging out with current WWE roster, as they've been distancing themselves from that, generally speaking. Now, Triple H recently told Ariel Helwani in his pre-Clash at the Castle interview that a process has begun in order to get Banks back to the company, saying there was a communication breakdown there for whatever reason. Starting back up that communication is not a difficult process, but it's a process, and you have to go through the process. And seemingly, the process has advanced to the stage where Sasha Banks wants to be seen with WWE people. Believe in the process. Have a nice weekend. In this WrestleTalk news, even more on the AEW Backstage Brawl that utterly imploded the top of their card, including what happened according to the Bucks and Omega. Plus, Ollie's going to be here reviewing AEW Dynamite. Don't envy him.